I think my brain has gone numb from how many little teeny tiny bricks I've glued this week. But the board is starting to look awesome. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the project, everybody. My name is Garmin. This, of course, is the Storycraft Society, and this week we are continuing our work on this big, massive city board. And I have been building this specifically for my games of Dungeons & Dragons and Moonstone the game. If you haven't been following along with the project, I will link all those videos down in the description below so that you can follow along with me from the beginning. But if you're just joining us now, what I had to spend this last week on is gluing a bunch of little teeny tiny eensy weensy baby bricks all over this board, and it's taken up 100% of my craft time this week. So I would not want to torture you with a video that was just me gluing down little bricks for the whole thing. But the good news is that through this process, I've actually learned some lessons. Now, I didn't think that I was going to learn many more lessons about gluing bricks as I've continued crafting, because I've done it for so long, but you know, hey, you get surprised by things, and not only did I learn one, but I think I learned a few that have really helped and will help in the future for me to speed up my bricklaying process, even if it's not on this massive of a scale in the future. Some of these things you may know, some of these things you may not know, and if you beat me to the punch on some of them, that's awesome. If, as always, you have beat me to the punch on stuff that I don't say in this video, leave it down in the comments below because I would love to hear it and we can all share in the community knowledge, and that part is always so great. So you'll notice that this one board is incomplete. All the others are finished. So what we have to do is today knock that one out, and as I'm working on that, I will gladly tell you all the things that I figured out through this project. Let's jump into laying more little teeny tiny bricks. So many of them. All of them. Lots of little tiny bricks. Little teeny tiny bricks. All right, so lesson number one is going to come in the form of something that I got out of when I was texturing all of my little bricks here. So the way that I normally make those, just really quickly, is I cut out the shape of the little bricks or blocks out of XPS foam. Then I take and dump them into a coffee can, and then inside the coffee can I have a bunch of gravel. The gravel is then mixed up with the foam bricks, and I take this outside and just shake. And what that's gonna do is beat all of the edges off of the foam and texture it up so that it gets texture. But something that I didn't realize until doing this project is that I was shaking the heck out of my bricks, like majorly shaking them a lot, and I wasn't getting a whole lot of texture, and I wondered why that was. Well, a little deep dive on the internet had me figure out that, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, I'll be sure to do a close-up, is that after a long time of being in a coffee can like this, the rocks lose all of their edges. They round, and they get super not jagged, and that doesn't lend itself well to texturing up blocks. The lesson number one in all of this is make sure that you change out the gravel that you have in your coffee can of rocks for tumbling your bricks. Simple, easy, let's go. My next tip through this whole process comes in the form of glue use. Now, this is nothing that is going to be any kind of new information for anybody who's a fan of the channel, but the thing that I will say is the difference between Eileen's tacky glue and Elmer's glue is so abysmally great to me. Anymore, there's only like one or two uses that I've even found for Elmer's glue all. Eileen's tacky glue, it just tacks up right away. It's so much thicker and more predictable than Elmer's glue is. I don't feel like Elmer's is gonna be a sponsor on the channel anytime soon, but Eileen's, if your people wanna get in contact with me, I would love to talk up your product. Next thing that we've gotta do is get bricks laid on here. I'm gonna start diving in, time lapse. Let's get these laid. And specifically, I meant lay the bricks. Actually, real quick before we dive into the time lapses, I just wanted to talk about one quick thing that I did that was actually really effective in saving me time in these bigger lays. Now you're gonna leave me? All right. Anyway, I took the time to cut up little half bricks. Not exactly half. Sometimes they're a little bigger, sometimes they're a little smaller. But I went ahead and cut those before I started gluing bricks. That saved me a bunch of time in the middle of the build. Hims, baby. Hims, you baby. You're very cute. You're very, very cute. You're a good boy. Yes, you do. So I could just look for the size that I need and drop it into place instead of having to worry with getting out an X-Acto knife, cutting the exact little piece, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So cut up a bunch of little half pieces. That'll save you a bunch of time in the long run. All right, time lapses. Okay, so as I glued my next area in, you'll notice that I didn't quite have enough to get all of my bricks in place and fill it all the way. So there's this little tiny gap. So there's a bunch of different options that you have here. You could try and space everything out a little bit so that there's not a huge gap in between each. That's one way that it works. And certainly if you're doing a big city board like this, it's a good idea to do different things on different boards. The one thing that I'll say that I found that's a really easy solution for this, other than slicing up little bricks to fit down in or doing the spacing thing, is you can actually take sand and sprinkle it down in between, and all that glue that's down there is going to take it and lock it down in place and give you something that looks interesting and textured, but also is not going to take a crazy amount of time like cutting and laying down all those individual bricks. On to the next thing, getting this last section bricked. With all of the blocks and stuff finished up on here, the next thing that I need to do is the roadway. So the way that I'm doing that is I'm putting down a layer of Eileen's tacky glue nice and thick on here, making sure to push that up against the little curb blocks. That way that it gets the dirt to kind of make the road look a little bit more, rounded out and natural. I will put sand all over the whole thing. I will let that set overnight so that it dries nice and solid, and then I will knock off all of that sand. The tip that I've gotten out of this is that the sooner you knock that loose sand off the top, I feel like the more smooth and consistent and flat the sand layer will be. Whereas if you leave that big thick pad of sand on it all night, you get more variation in the kind of overall smoothness in the texture. Fun side note, while I let this dry, I went through 3 of these 16-ounce things of Eileen's tacky glue through this project. 3. That's a very, 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 very crazy amount. But it's the best. This has to dry. Catch up with you in a bit. I'd love it if the cars would stop. Okay. You see how I said I love it if the cars would stop, and then... It is the next day and all of the glue has dried, so I've knocked all of my sand off, and this means that our project is all done with the basic sculpting, which means I think there is only one more week to go and we'll have this whole thing finished. Basically, paint is all that's left for the basic sculpting. Now in the future, I'll be adding things to it and changing some things up and maybe adding a little bit more detail. But for now, I think we have one more video and another loud car that is between us and a finished city board. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Definitely do all of the YouTube stuff, subscribe, like, comment, all that fun stuff. And until next week, I'll be seeing you. All right, it is the next day and all of my glue, good gracious, people.